Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. We're in our new studio today, or at least I am. And I just want to remind you before we get started that you can follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel. It's youtube.com/Film Talk Radio. And if you leave a comment, then we'll do our best to respond to you. I'm joined by co host Gary Farmer. Hey, Gary.
How are you?
And I'm good, brother. We're having a really exciting show today, so I'm just going to jump right into her introduction. Her recent film credits include Julie Taymor's Gloria Steinem biopic, The Glorias, Catch the Fair One, executive produced by Darren Aronofsky, which won the Audience Award in Tribeca and went on to play at the Santa Fe Independent Film Festival, and The Dark Divide, starring David Cross and Deborah Messing. Kimberly can also be seen in Taika Waititi and Sterling Harjo's hit comedy Reservation Dogs, Rutherford Falls, The Wilds, Montana Story, and The English, starring Emily Blunt and Chasky Spencer. On stage, Kimberly originated the role of Johanna in Tracy Lett's Tony Award-winning play August Osage County in Chicago, Broadway, London, and Sydney, and also starred in Manhattan for the Public Theater New York and The Fry Bread Queen. Kimberly is an enrolled member of the Colville Tribes and also has Salish Kootenai heritage. Kimberly Norris Guerrero, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Gary and Jacques. So fun to be here.
Hey, Kimberly, how are you? Thanks a
Friend?
lot. Of course, Kimberly and I guess we have to admit we play partners in a film we shot over in Spain just recently and this past summer. And how did you survive the journey?
Oh man, it's one of the greatest experiences in my life to get to go, with you, to get to be over there with you and finally work with you so closely on such a great project and in Spain. So it was just everything about it was really wonderful. And to have that amount of time in a place where you can really get to know the neighborhood. And I mean, we were able to travel on the weekends. And of course, in Europe, the public transportation is so great. So it was really easy to hop on a train and go someplace wonderful like Sevilla or Toledo or someplace like that. So it was
I know
just all in
you.
all a wonderful trip.
Your trip to Sevilla was especially to go see the dance.
Whew, amazing. Yeah.
I got to see one in Madrid, and I just loved it. I actually posted a image that I took while I was there. But anyway, what did you think to work with our director Hugo Blick, who apparently was like the first Joker in the first Batman movie or something? I haven't.
Yes, indeed. Yes, he's the first Joe. That was his claim to fame, but and then also as a director. But I just really responded to his spirit of creation. And there was just, and I think we all were working so hard and hoping so desperately that we were going to get to press through and get to actually even make it. So I think that made it very special as well, because it wasn't a given that we were even going to be able to shoot, with the quarantine and people coming in from America and from the UK and from, the mostly Spanish crew. And it was like, how do we get all these people together in this place to tell this story? So, I think everybody was just really grateful to be there. And just, you can kind of tell the way a director is working based on how, like, it goes all the way down the line. And everybody was so happy to be there. From craft service and gaffers and the sound folks. I mean, everybody was so happy to be a part of it, whether they were at base camp or whether they were right there, on set. And I think that's a real testament to Hugo and the team that he assembled, and to Emily as well, and Chasque for really just creating a really beautiful atmosphere to work in.
Yeah, it was really special. I agree, and I always enjoyed the Spanish crew because they take such pride in their involvement in the creation of film history.
Yes.
Even to the spaghetti western and all the early Clint Eastwood films that were made there, and it's like generations of families so proud of their contribution to
Right.
kind of American history storytelling.
Right. Ironic.
Yeah, totally ironic. But it's so happy to have you on the show.
Oh, it's great to be here, Gare.
You know, we had Sterling Harjo on the show not that long ago. And I know I've just been loving what a big hit Reservation Dogs is becoming. And from what I can tell, it just seems like it was the most fun to be on that set. And you got to really get down with a lot of cool people. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's another fun thing that I get to share with Gary, even though we weren't on set at the same time, but it was just a long time coming. And I think that, I was just so excited it was happening. And then I didn't know that I would get to be a part of it because I knew it was mainly focusing on, on the kids and their story. And so when the opportunity came to audition, for Auntie B, and most people don't see me like that, and it was like, I can do it. Like, I'm an actor, but it was really fun getting to even audition, to get to show that side of my, of my skills and then just
Your
knowing that.
miserable self.
Exactly, my miserable self. And just, to be honest, just knowing those folks. And, we all have an auntie like that, or a cousin, or, somebody on our, in our neighborhood that we know. And so it was just really paying homage to about 3 people in my life. That one that I grew up with, two that I grew up with, and one that I met later on in life, but just, those Native women that just have that kind of, that edge, but I still love them. And I love being around them. And they also kind of terrify me. So they will go unnamed. But so I think, I don't know, it was really fun to kind of bring that aspect to it where, hopefully, I mean, I don't know where the character is going to go, or if it's going to go in the future, but it's just nice to that person that we know. Because, they say in screenwriting that the more specific you are, the more universal. And so it was taking that within the character as well, as being really specific to the 3 women that I was, kind of drawing this character from. Small town in Oklahoma. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Oklahoma, not too far. We played that town where we filmed in football. We're very, very small, small towns. And so it was just like, this is so crazy to come here to do what we love back here at home, in small town Oklahoma. So it was an absolute joy.
I think it was, is it Ida Moore?
Ida Bell,
Oklahoma. Now, I this story about your stepmom, I guess, and you grew up with OSU, Oklahoma State University football. Your mom was like one of the big involvement in terms of the community with the team, and
yes,
there was this amazing story on Sports Illustrated that kind of that fed your mom into being part of the corruption of college football, and you kind of rebuffed it. That was a beautiful.
I was upset. Yeah, this is my adopted mom. I was adopted by a family in Idabel, and they were huge Oklahoma State fans. And when I was, I guess, 20, I got reconnected with my Native American family. So I was extraordinarily fortunate to get to grow up with both sides, both of these families, and be loved by both of these families. And my adopted family, yeah, they were just hardcore Oklahoma State fans. And so I grew up going to the football games and basketball games and wrestling matches and things like that. And my mom really it was like the blind side. Like, she was Leanne Toohey. Like, she was there for the students, and she had been working tutoring students, Oklahoma State football players and some basketball players as well. And yeah, the corruption came out, the what do you call it? The accusations. And so one of her somebody who was really close to her was like, oh yeah, Miss Norris did this. And it was like, what? Like, my mom, I tell the story in the article, like, we would be out in the middle of nowhere, like, out in the farm, like, just farm. And we'd come to a stop sign, and mom would stop at a 4-way stop. I was like, Mom, why are you stopping? She goes, because there's a stop sign. And it's just like, so, I mean, she was just follow the rules, kind of person. And so it was, and she had just passed away from lung cancer. And it was just like, y'all need to step off. Like, this is my mom's legacy. And this is not, I'm not saying this stuff wasn't there and go investigate it, but don't just go, oh, and she did this and she did that in Sports Illustrated, so it was that was a very, yeah. And also my mom, Kay, this is my adopted mom. She also co-founded our community theater in Idabel, the McCurtain Community Players. So that was also kind of where my love for theater came from my adopted side. And from my Native American side, we're just full of storytellers. So it was a really, I had a very powerful combination of storytelling and both my nature and my nurture.
And of course, it led to your kind of sporty disposition, because you were like a cheerleader, but then you became like the teen queen, not only of the high school, but eventually of the state, right? Like you were like a state.
Yeah. So my dream was to go to UCLA. I mean, I'm this teeny tiny, like remote, like we're 4 hours from anywhere, not exaggerating. We're 5 hours from Oklahoma City, 5 hours from Tulsa, 4 hours from Dallas. So any kind of big place, and all I wanted to do was be in film and television. And so I found a map when I was like the atlas, the Rand McAnally atlases, like when I was 7 or 8 years old. And I would look for Hollywood because I knew that's where they did things. And then right near Hollywood was UCLA. And I had seen UCLA on TV because of course we're college football fans. And I thought the colors were really pretty because it was powder blue and yellow. And I saw the pom-pom girls and I was literally like, that's what I'm going to be when I grow up. I'm going to be a UCLA pom-pom girl. And it just got in my head. It's like, well, there it is. It's by Hollywood. And so I got this crazy notion in my head that I wanted to go to UCLA. And as I got, closer to graduation, I could tell my parents were not about to let me go out at 18 years old by myself, to Los Angeles, if I even got into school. And so I got this harebrained idea that if I entered this beauty pageant, I could possibly win a scholarship and a car. And like, then what are they going to say? Like, I've got car, I've got scholarship, if I get in, like, what are they really going to do? And doggone, like, that's just, I'm like, oh my God, delusions of grandeur. And so I won our little high school, our little high school competition. And then, so I tried out for Miss Oklahoma and I won Miss Oklahoma. And then I went to the nationals in Florida and I won the whole thing, won the scholarship, won the car. And my brother Chris was like, if she can handle this, she can probably get to, she can probably make it at UCLA, at 18. And so, I mean, they relented. And I found out later they actually had a dorm room set aside for me at OSU because they didn't think I would make it out at UCLA. And I was like, it's like, bye, love you, see ya.
There goes Miss America.
So yeah, it was a great opportunity. And it weirdly, the movie Miss Congeniality with Sandra Bullock, that is my story. Like, I came into it not for the reason that most people, and with these ideas of what pageant girls were like, and I absolutely fell in love with these girls from all over the country. And so when I ended up winning, and Miss Oklahoma was what started it. It stopped being about doing this for myself. It was doing it for these young women. They were so cool. And I just wanted to represent them well. And then when I won the nationals, I loved the girls that I was with. They just had such incredible stories. And so I think, that kind of, it's kind of been part of my whole story. It's like, I don't mind taking on the mantle of representing folks. And Gary, you know how much we've had to advocate for ourselves as Indigenous folks, in film and television. So I think I started advocating at kind of a young age, and trying to build a bridge, of communication between the powers that be and whoever I'm representing.
Yeah. And now the battle is misrepresentation, and you've been fighting it a long time. And I'm not exactly sure how you ended up on the Revenant set, but as an extra. But it was from that experience that kind of launched a whole new effort. That's, you had some experience there that you didn't appreciate much.
Yeah, it was and it was one that tied, interestingly, I wanted to go because I wanted to see the director of photography. I wanted to see how he did those long shots. And so it was like it was a very specific role that they were looking for. And it had to work with this long shot. Like this person, this extra needed to know how film works so that they could hit this mark and do all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I would love, because I want to see that DP at work anyway. And I wouldn't mind seeing the director at work as well. And it was at the very end of the shoot. And there was going to be Massacre Village and Happy Village. And so I was going to be in the Happy Village. And I'm like, oh, bummer. Like, I love being in the others so I can get out all this existential grief and angst, where I can cry and, all that stuff. And so I get to set and, I have my, my wardrobe and everything. And so they bring me into, and they were very kind. They brought me into like the main makeup trailer because they knew I was not, I mean, they knew I was an actor. And so they were treating me very kindly. And all of a sudden they're like, started dirtying me up, like dirty, and like painting my teeth yellow. And I'm like, whoa. Like, I thought I was in the Happy Village, but I guess I'm in the Massacre Village. I was like, oh, good. I get to be in the Massacre Village. I mean, why are we even, this conversation we're having is just crazy, but welcome to our world for the last 30 years in film and television. And so they're like, no, you're in the Happy Village. And I'm like, how can I be in the Happy Village if I look like Captain Caveman right now? Like, they're like, well, it's the vision of the piece that everybody's very dirty, everybody's very dark, everybody's very, and I'm like, okay, I'm playing Pawnee. Like, I have really good Pawnee friends. And, again, representation. I'm like, these are the brightest, coolest, funniest people, and their relatives were never dirty unless something was wrong with them. Unless they were in dire straits. And this is Happy Village. This is before anything's nothing bad, quote unquote, is happening right now. This is Happy Village. And it just really, and then I realized, this is the last week of shooting. They're doing basically, and there's nothing. And I just sat there and I was just like, I was fuming. And I was like, do I leave? Because this happened to me. Gary, our friend Casey Camp Hornick really well as well, and Casey was on my very first show, Son of the Morning Star. And they did the same thing to me. I was in this beautiful white buckskin dress and they took me out. It's a story of George Armstrong Custer. And he had a Cheyenne wife and child. And my character played, was her cousin. And so it's the retelling of Custer from that perspective, the Cheyenne perspective, and from his wife's perspective. And so I'm telling the Cheyenne side visually. Buffy St. Marie was doing the voice. And so they marched me to the director, and Casey has done my hair. She's helped me get dressed. I mean, I felt like I was ready for a ceremony. And I'm in Montana, where my grandma's folks are from. And it was just so extraordinary. What an extraordinary, thing. And so they walked me down to the director, and I felt so proud. I felt so ready to do this. And he looked at me, and I knew he was going to say, yeah, she looks great. Let's go shoot. He said, she's too clean. And I was like, what? And so they're like, and then the first AD is like, fly in the Fuller's Earth. And so they came in, I don't know what Fuller's Earth was. They came up with basically a little dirt bag. It's like a makeup dirt bag. And they just start like, white buckskin, y'all. Boom, 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 boom. Like just dirt all over my face, underneath my fingernails. They painted my teeth yellow like that as well. And it was just like, whoa, what's happening? And I walked into my trailer because I had looked at myself before I went out, and I was just like, whoa, like, look. And I don't know, Gary, do you ever feel that when you're looking in the makeup trailer? In your own trailer, and you see yourself in your wardrobe and you see the character looking back at you? It's a pretty cool feeling. It's like, all right, like, and so I had seen myself before I went out, and it was very touching, like almost. And then when I came back in completely dirty, I was crushed. I was just like, and I didn't know, I was 20, I was, in my early 20s, I was just starting, and I didn't know what to say or what to do. And I just felt crushed. And I was just like, I was like, Custer better be this dirty, No, Custer wasn't that dirty. No, Custer's perfectly clean, it's perfectly clean, like crisp, I'm like, what? And so it was just the same, all these years later. And it was just ironically on the cusp of me going back to get my MFA in screenwriting to fight the misrepresentation and underrepresentation of our people. I'm like, well, shoot, like, and it was for our younger, our younger ones that are out there. And I don't mean younger in age. I mean, just new actors, native actors that want to be working. There wasn't anything for them. We're talking, it just fell off. There was just not a lot of work out there for us. And it was literally, I think maybe 2 or 3 weeks later that I started my MFA program. So it really put a fire underneath me to just pump out as much work as I could over that 3 years, and then start pitching it to Hollywood. So at the same time, Sterling's out there doing his, everybody, Jacques got his projects. We all have our projects out there that we're trying to, get in the lane and get in the pipeline so that we can start telling our own stories. And we are.
God, I love that story. And Gary, I know you have a similar story that I've heard you tell, or maybe not a similar story, but you have a story about the Earth from smoke signals that I've heard you tell so many times, but maybe never on the air.
Well, I was thinking that was listening to, that's a native production, so it was a contemporary story. But it's whoever's the at the time there was no costume designer heading up the movie, and that's often still the case, although our Native American movement in fashion is profound, but there's still not a lot of costume designers necessarily looking at the contemporary making of television yet. The content and all that will change, but I can't help but I'm just so, you're starting off in Oklahoma, and then that relationship you had with Hene Gugema in UCLA, but which led eventually to this 2008 Pulitzer Prize for Drama with Tracy Lett as the playwright in this. Of course, everyone knows the film August Osage County. And in the film, the actress, the late Misty Upham, plays her character. But just the 2 years on stage, venturing as the original, maid character, and I forget her name, Jonna, and how, and then the playwright. And I know you did an interview with the playwright Tracy Letts, and he actually credits, that he's actually a member of the tribe too, right? And that we're all kind of mixed blood at some level in America, and that whole thing you wrote about the Indian in the attic as the maid in the attic and stuff. That must have been amazing to listen to that play for 2 years, some over 600 performances. Can you tell us a bit about that experience?
Yeah, it really was. It was truly a masterclass in everything, in writing and storytelling, in how to connect with an audience, in acting, because I was on stage. Here it is, Tracy's words, and he's equally as good of an actor. If you've seen him in Ford versus Ferrari or Little Women or Lady Bird or, just on and on. Tracy is just such an exceptional actor and thinker and storyteller. And yes, his dad is an enrolled member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, and he doesn't talk about it, and he certainly doesn't put himself out there as that, but it's very much a part of his person. And just growing up in Oklahoma, he grew up about an hour and 15 minutes away from me in Durant, Oklahoma, and so it was a very personal story to me. As I talked about, my mom, Kay, my adopted mom, had just passed away from lung cancer. And I was, and then I came back to California, and I was helping my father-in-law Jean Guerrero passed away from liver cancer. And so when the auditions came around, I was like, I'm exhausted. I've been up with him and helping him make his journey. And they said, will you please come in? Like, we don't have to be off book. We just want to meet you. And, Johnny's like, Dad will want you to go. And I was like, he would. And so, I mean, we're talking about within 24 hours of after he passed. So, I mean, it was just like right there. And I was, just exhausted and shell shocked. And I went in and did the audition. And I was really, it was like, it's Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf's, arguably one of the greatest theater companies in America, if not the world. I mean, the kind of acting that it pumps out, it's real blue collar acting. It's real, you don't act, you go there and you deliver authentic, in the moment, authentic performances that are serving each other on stage and are serving the text. And so I was like, I haven't been on stage in like 6 years. Like, I don't know if I can handle being on stage with Steppenwolf. And then Johnny was just like, look at the story. The story's about a native young woman helping somebody pass away from cancer. Like, that's in Oklahoma. And I moved back to Oklahoma to help my mom pass away from cancer. And so it was like, literally had been my life. And I'm like, and so that I got the role, and it was such extraordinary text. And Tracy wrote it. It was commissioned by Steppenwolf for their ensemble. So you're talking about folks that have had, Rondi Reed and Fran Guinan, who were there at the very beginning with Jeff Perry and all those folks at the very beginning of Steppenwolf in that church, that little church basement, I believe is where they began. So these like you and I have this, when we went to the English, like, we didn't just meet each other. We got this long time, bond that I think does show up on screen. We have a shorthand with each other. And so it was not only getting to work with this extraordinary text, but this extraordinary cast, and watching them work and watching them fight, on stage, off stage, watching them love each other, watching them support each other, just a radical democratization of acting. Now we would call it decolonization of acting, where there was the hierarchy it's very circular. We're all for one. I mean, I couldn't believe they were including me in the discussion of, do we go to Broadway? And if we do go to Broadway, which house do we go to? Which producer? I'm like, why are you including, why is my vote? I'm not an ensemble member, but they wanted to hear from me. And so it really just taught me a lot about how we tell our stories and why we tell our stories. And then, of course, 2 years on Broadway, and then also the Sydney run and the London run. It taught me a lot about how do you intuit what the audience is feeling that day. How do you get in there and really allow them to be that last cast member, and respond to the text and respond to them. I would never forget one of the most meaningful, and we went through a lot of crises, of course, over the course of 2 years, but Heath Ledger passed away when we were there. And I had just been right below his apartment, and just like maybe 3 days prior to that. And it was just like, oh, you could just feel it. And taking that on stage, that day. And then obviously when Tracy's dad, Dennis, passed, who was the original character, played the father, Beverly Weston. And so when Dennis passed, taking that on stage with us, I mean, we were having to talk about this man passing, and while he was actually passing, and then, so it was just a very profound experience. And just, I know it changed me forever. And it made me a different kind of storyteller. I think a smarter storyteller. And I think a more, I just have a lot more grounded experience, embodied experience, of the craft. And I would love that. Gary, you've been on several series as a series regular. It's like, I would love that someday to be able to be a series regular, so that I can have day in and day out on a television show where I'm constantly working, because I don't know, Gary, if you find this as well, but I'm constantly, when I come back in, like on an episode like Rutherford Falls, like, wait, like where's the where are my marks? How do I do the lighting? How, it's the learning curve of getting back into that. And it's like, oh man, it must be so cool to like go in day after day after day. And the tech, you already know, the technical stuff. You can really focus more on the performance, because I'm always still focusing as much on the technical side of where do I need to hit this mark? And do I not need to like overlap this actor, because are we on 2 cameras or is it a single, just all the technical stuff that we deal with in film and television. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing to it but to do it. So I do think a lot of repetition is helpful.
We're on commercial radio, so they always look for approximately 10 minutes. So I just figured that was close. I don't know.
Yeah, this would probably be the end of segment 3 right about now, and then we'll come back and we'll have about another 10-minute segment with Kimberly Norris Guerrero. So, God, it's been such a nice conversation with you guys, and hearing you talk about working with Alejandro Inarritu and El Chivo, I think they call him, the cinematographer, was exciting. And you've had this career that spanned decades. So I guess what I'm wondering is, I guess we're kind of more in the part about talking about being on stage now. Maybe this is a good time for you to tell us a bit more about your process and what you're tapping into within yourself. I mean, I think you've gotten to it a bit, but maybe there's more you can tell us.
Yeah, I ended up taking Gary just alluded to it, but my mentor at UCLA was Hene Gigama, and he's a fantastic Indigenous scholar and theater professor. And when I started in theater television at film television at UCLA, and I felt like I felt like I could take acting classes anywhere, good acting classes is Los Angeles. But I was at UCLA and it was like all this amazing research was happening. So I ended up studying history. And so interestingly enough, it's the historical process. It's the study of history that feeds into my acting. So when I look at a character, I'm looking at the context. I'm looking at holistically, what's happening in this person's world, socioeconomically, philosophically, spiritually, the context of the days, even if it's contemporary, or like say, us being on Rutherford Falls, it's like, well, okay, is she from that area? Is she from the Northeast? Is it, because that's a whole different mindset, a whole different philosophy. Is the nation they're from patriarchal or matriarchal? Because that changes things slightly. So I think that, the historical approach of breaking down a character has been really helpful for me. And then it's about finding that intersection of myself, and the character, like where we intersect, and finding the performance in that little aspect of it. And even if it's somebody like Auntie B, who, is really, I mean, I could never do that. I mean, I would have to like be in a, some kind of head injury and like come out like, I can't be mean. It's very, unless somebody's jacking with somebody I love, then I can be very mama bear. But, it's finding somebody that I know and love, and can get into their body and find their voice and the way that they physically carry themselves, or where they carry their, where they carry their stress, or maybe what they're afraid of but don't tell anybody. So it's just always about a very like a personal exchange with the character that I'm playing, and starting off initially of like what aspects of myself do I see in this person that I might be able to bring some known humanity to them, and then it's secondarily like the people that I know and love or have observed in my life. So I'm always stealing from people. If I hear somebody with a great accent or a great laugh, or, they have a great like little mannerism, I'm like always like kind of putting that in like a file going, ooh, I want to use that one day. to see if I can work that into a character. And then the last thing is the best thing I think of all is, when we get, like, Gary and I got to play husband and wife on this show. And so it's like, ooh, just knowing what you're going to come to it with, but once you get in there and you're with the people that you're working with, like, ultimately, what are they going to give me? Because that might change something that I had intended, but there's something so much better because now I'm in relationship with these folks, whether it's an antagonistic relationship or we're allies. It's just like, that's also going to feed in, to who I am and what I'm doing. So yeah, collaboration is kind of that last piece. Oh, Gary.
Oh, I love that.
It was really fun to work with Emily Blunt. Didn't you find as a movie star? I mean, you had a few more scenes with her, I think, exterior.
Yes, just such a generous, present person, both on camera and off camera. And Gary, there's that beautiful reality of, I mean, in some ways, even when you're lost in the scene, if you get so lucky, right, to be lost in a scene or lost in the character, there's still an underlying dialogue between yourself and the other person and the director and the cameras. There's these dual worlds going on at both times. And so I found that I found Emily, some actors will give you that and some actors won't. And I felt like Emily was always there. Like, she was there as the character and she was there as Emily.
Right.
And so, like, Emily and I were having a conversation and our characters were having a conversation on the surface. And that's a really exciting, like, I think we felt that too, Gary, especially you and me, like, sitting at the table, like Gary and Kimberly were having this conversation, and like, then our characters were like, because I was like, Gary's just so delightful. And it was like Emily, kid you not, brag on Gary right now. Emily, Chaska, everybody, Gary, we were on his single and he finishes his single and everybody was just like bowing down to Gary, like, we're not worthy. Like, and people just going, now that's an actor. That's an actor. Emily Blunt saying this. And it's just like, yep. And so it was just kind of fun, like, being able to give Gary back, like, I'm kind of sassing him as his wife just a little bit in a loving way. But it was my character sassing him, but underneath Kimberly going, Gary, that was badass. I love what you just did right there. So it's just this really lovely dialogue. And yeah, Emily was right there with that. It was such a gift.
But now that we've worked with her, now when I see her, like even on Jungle or whatever, I just go, oh, I know that moment. Like, I know you see something in her that she's performing and you go, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Her craft is on point for sure.
But now, as of May 21, you're working as the associate professor in the Department of Theater, Film, Digital Production at the University of California, Riverside.
Yes.
How's that going?
It's fantastic. Yeah, I was named the artistic director, and I've been teaching there since 2017. But I'm getting to help shape our seasons. And so I'm really pressing toward decolonizing theater and filmmaking at UCR, whatever that means. We're trying to figure it out. No, I mean, we have ideas, and even my own unique ideas of what decolonization means. Little things like I try to make sure everything is a unanimous decision versus a majority decision. I'd rather like spend the extra time sussing things out to make sure everybody is, it may take some more time, but then everybody has kind of, I'm saying decolonizing, but I was going to say ownership, but people feel like their voice has been heard and we're all moving together, kind of.
That's more traditional.
It is traditional. It is traditional. So it's finding those traditional ways. We do a lot of more, like, for lack of a better word, like work on our spirits, like work on our souls, like making sure everybody feels safe and heard. And, we're talking about, getting into a character, but exit strategies as well. So, doing these really, because, the seasons that I'm trying to curate are going deep. So we started with a new play called Brown Face, that is talking about red face, yellow face, all of this idea of performing another person's culture. And so, you got these, and it's one of my former grad students wrote it. It's by college students, for college students, about college students, performed by college students. And so they're going deep into, the dreamer situation with, first generation Mexican students that are on the fence, like they could get kicked out any second, or they can say, I mean, it was really deep thing. So we needed, how do we get into this? How do we get out of this and keep you safe as you're telling these stories? Next, we're just about to start. Now we're going to be online for our first 2 weeks. I don't know how we're going to do that in rehearsals, but Men on Boats, which is tackling manifest destiny. And then our last project of the season is Red Oleanders by, which is an East Indian classical play. Because I was like, I love Shakespeare, but let's do something we haven't seen. I really want to diversify the classics. So yeah, it's like, oh, an Indian classical play. Let's try that, So it's just this really fun, adventurous. We're taking a gamble or a risk, but so far, it's really paying off, and it's a very exciting time, to be creating. And UC Riverside is the most extraordinary place. It's I think we're the only university in the United States that was the land was given by an indigenous person. So the man, Rupert Costo, who co-founded UC Riverside, gave UC Riverside the land, granted the land. So we're actually on Indian land granted by a native person, which is pretty cool. And you feel that.
That's a show, you guys. Is there anything else you'd like to add? And thanks so much. It was so much fun. We talked with Kimberly Norris Guerrero, and if there's anything you want to ask her before we go, Gary or Kimberly, anything you'd like to add, please go ahead.
No, I can't think of anything. It's just nice, Kim, that you came to play. And what I'm most proud of is that you're, as a professional, and you are the ultimate professional, but to take that to the students and also the work that you and Johnny are doing with the Akatubi Film Music Academy, and of course the Style Horse Collective, and reaching out to Indigenous and underprivileged youth to upgrade their skills and the things you're so special at. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's probably the last thing I would say was, we did Akatubi back in the day. I mean, back in the 2000s, and Tazba Chavez is one of our very first students who is now hiring us to do work.
Yeah.
And so we helped her, I helped mentor her in her first film project. And so I think that you're right, Gary. It's such a gift. We've been fighting this fight of underrepresentation and misrepresentation for so long. And it's so rewarding to be able to sow those seeds of our experience. I mean, I'm teaching students things I wish I would have known, and mistakes. I'd rather them learn from my mistakes than they're going to make their own, right? But the ones that I can tell them about, on my end, and I'm still learning, I'm taking, one of my projects is being purchased right now by Galmont, and we hope that it will go and get picked up. And so it's like a whole nother learning process of how do I get a show on television? Then I'll be able to bring that back to the students and really help marginalized voices help tell their stories, because I really think I think that kind of storytelling is a powerful antidote to the dehumanization that's just sweeping the globe right now, because story is ceremony. Storytelling is ceremony, and story is medicine.
It must have been awfully fun to work with Michael recently, Gray Eyes, after all the adoration of the awards and everything that he's gotten. Can you tell us a bit about the new work with Rutherford Falls?
Yes. So Michael Gray Eyes is also, I think, Gary, you and I have been friends as long as Michael and I have. So we're coming up on 30 years, on 3 decades of knowing each other. And so getting to play his wife on Rutherford Falls is, again, that kind of shorthand. And to getting to play this very upscale, kind of indigenous couple we haven't seen yet, at the same time very rooted in their traditions. It's really, really fun. And all I can say is just hold on to your hats for episode 1, because we do something very, very cool that's very pop culture, a very pop culture reference. And I just think it was just a lot of fun, and to get to do that with Michael. It involves dancing. It involves
good.
like ballroom-esque dancing. So
Excellent. Yeah, you're both
so
talented.
keep your eyes out for that.
Nice.
And Michael's
Can't
a
wait to
genius.
see that.
Oh, thanks.
Well, this was another episode of Film Talk Weekly, and thanks so much to Kimberly Norris Guerrero. And we'll see you next week. You can support the show. It's a project of the nonprofit Santa Fe Film Institute, and you can support the show at santafefilminstitute.org.